So our next guest is Sarah Zhang, and I see that she's in the room. Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. And this lightning talk is on teaching spatial literacy in the context of community engagement. And just some background on Sarah, she's the librarian for geography, GIS, and maps at SFU. Sarah holds a Master's of Library and Information Studies and a Master's of Science and Ecology. What a great combo. As an immigrant and mother, she is constantly inspired by the cultures around her, whether as an insider or outsider. Passionate about lowering the bar to entering GIS mapping for students, researchers, and the public, she enjoys providing learning opportunities for them to become not only consumers of geospatial data, which has become pervasive in today's world, but also producers and communicators of geospatial information and knowledge. So thank you so much and welcome, Sarah.
Thank you for having me. I will just go ahead and share my screen. Okay, can you see it? Okay, wonderful. Okay, hello everyone. My name is Sarah Zhang, and I'm the librarian for geography, GIS, and maps at SFU. And today I'm going to talk about teaching GIS in the context of community engagement. And just to give you a rough idea of what I do, helping researchers and students use geospatial data is a big part of my job. So we regularly host the GIS workshops for SFU researchers and students. But today I'm not going to talk about those workshops. I'm going to instead talk about some experimental GIS workshops we have done. And these workshops are very different from our regular GIS workshops in that they are all essentially centered around community engagement. Trying to locate my mouse, sorry. Okay, so first thing first, what is GIS? It stands for Geographic Information Systems. Maybe you have never heard about it, but I'm sure you have encountered it in your daily life. So it is a computer-based technology to collect, integrate, analyze, query, model, and visualize geographic oriented data. And very interestingly, in the past 2 decades or so, we witnessed the dramatic increase in geospatial data, services, and applications available on the web. Just think about Google Maps, OpenStreetMap, or various social media sites with a web map or a social element. So that's why I said you must have encountered it, even if you have never heard about it. And more interestingly, alongside the plethora of spatial data and apps, a phenomenon named neo-geography arose. It means creating maps, collecting spatial data are no longer restricted to privileged researchers and professionals. However, it is important to remember that this empowering process of new GIS technologies is uneven and limited to people who are already technically literate. So to address the opportunities and challenges brought by neo-geography, spatial literacy and GIS education for the public will be the key. So it is against these backdrops that we started to design and deliver GIS workshops targeting the general public. We have collaborated with Coquitlam Public Library and SFU initiative called the Public Square. which is mandated to nurture community connections. In those workshops, we taught the participants how to use some open data from City of Vancouver's open data portal and Statistics Canada's census data. We taught them how they can query, visualize the data, and find patterns emerging from the data. So the second image you see, that is an example of the output of a workshop. So we made a map of the percentage of visible minority people population in Vancouver. And here's some feedback from the participants. As you can see, many of them were really enthusiastic about learning a little bit GIS. And one person said, I'm inspired to begin creating a GIS map of my own neighborhood. So it's really rewarding to see feedback like that. And I also wanted to point out that we didn't just copy our URL workshops designed for university researchers and students, because that would not work. The workshops I just mentioned were intended to provide an equitable GIS education opportunity, meaning it was designed for the people who have very little GIS experience, did not usually work with data, or felt learning about GIS was daunting. And the strategies we adopted include minimizing technical barriers and adopting a framework that breaks down spatial literacy to knowledge, skills, and dispositions. And in terms of disposition, we've emphasized on critical thinking, which is super important in today's world, because you can see so many misleading maps on the web. So we encourage the participants to understand the links between the type of the map you see and the map and the data it represents. So I've talked about those workshops targeting the public, right? Those are in community engagement endeavors in their own right, I believe. But there's another perspective from which I see the alignment between teaching spatial literacy and community engagement, which is to empower researchers with mapping tools and methods that are useful when they are doing community engaged research, or community members when they are involved in advocacy work, for example, for their own communities. So I'm going to highlight a concept called participatory mapping. Participatory mapping are visual representations of what a community perceives as its place and the significant features within it. They are based on the premise that local communities possess expert knowledge of their environments. So it's their own knowledge, and we teach them how they can turn their own knowledge to spatial data, which is really powerful. And we collaborated with CRE, which stands for Community Engaged Research Initiative. It is a SFU campus unit mandated to support community engaged research. And we did a workshop named Participatory Mapping Using GIS and Maps to Center Community Knowledge. The event was really successful, attracting over 20 participants, including SFU students, researchers, and community members. Okay, so just to conclude, whether it is teaching GIS or spatial literacy to the public as an endeavor of community engagement, or empowering researchers and community members to use a participatory mapping tool or method to collect location-based community knowledge, I believe these efforts represent new opportunities for geospatial or map librarians. And I'd like to borrow some sentiment from the authors of a paper that reflected on their experience with a project called Mapping Prejudice. Maybe some of you have heard about it. And their call to action really resonated with me. And the words go like this: by adhering to their principles, namely public service and collaboration, tapping into their core strength, and removing internal institutional barriers, libraries are uniquely positioned to engage in community projects that utilize co-creation to advance social justice and an expansive vision of the public good. So we do have a role in the public good, even if we are academic library. So that is the end of my presentation. Thanks so much for having me, and happy to answer any questions. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thanks so much, Sarah. I think of my past life as a K-12 teacher and doing lots of written mapping with students, that now it would be wonderful to take this to the next level with students, go out and map their neighborhoods and look at archives. And so this would be a great opportunity, I think, for K-12 teachers as well to engage in something like this. So any questions for Sarah? Questions, comments, thoughts? It's very quiet out there. I did see, Sarah, on the BCLA listserv that you're offering a workshop that's coming up. Is that right?
It already happened. It's GS Day. Yeah, it's GS Day this Wednesday, and we had a great turnout.
Okay, I did promote it to our geography department, so I was hoping some folks from there went.
Thank you.
Julie's asking, which GIS tools did you use in these community workshops?
For the workshops we did for Coquitlam Public Library and Public Square, we used ArcGIS Online, which is a web-based mapping tool. And the reason I chose that is it's really easy to use, very low learning barrier. So yeah, it's a very accessible tool. And I used a public account. They don't need to pay for anything. So that is why we used that tool. And for the participatory mapping workshop, we used Google Earth Pro. It's also for free. I'm not sure if it's open source. Maybe it is, but it's it's also not hard to learn that tool, and it's very powerful to show people how you can just drop a pane or draw some lines or polygons and attach your knowledge about that location to the map. And the nice thing about Google Earth Pro is it shows you satellite imagery, right? So you can see very clearly the landscape, the buildings, everything in your neighborhood. And that makes it really easy for community members or researchers to map their knowledge to the satellite imagery.
Oh, interesting. I'm trying to visualize it. I think about sometimes, when you walk down the street and there's a historical kind of podium that tells you on this street corner such and such happened. There's been these sorts of public art installations, but that would be like a virtual version of that, connecting stories to place and opportunities maybe for people to look at where green spaces are or aren't in their city, or access for children, or whatever our focus might be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can. Yeah, that is the power of participatory mapping, because it's not top-down approach, right? It's grassroots, and you can just map whatever you're interested in. For example, if you see some weakness, something is lacking in your neighborhood, and you want to map it, and you want to advocate your needs to some government people, then you can use this mapping tool to do that.
That's very cool. Okay, any other questions for Sarah? Okay, and if there's any questions that come up, we could post them on the Padlet. We all know how to get in touch with each other if, or you can just reach out to Sarah directly. Sarah, thank you so much for your presentation. I've never heard of participatory mapping, so I'm very excited to learn more about it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so looking at our schedule, our next presenter is, I'm going to find my sheaf of papers here, empowering learning through open education, integrating Creative Commons into course publishing projects. So we have two presenters. We have Ioana Liuta, who's a digital publishing librarian at SFU and the Public Knowledge Project. In this role, she oversees the journal and book hosting services offered by SFU Library and provides publishing support to faculty and student journals and monographs on open journal systems and open monograph press. As part of PKP, that's the Public Knowledge Project, as part of PKP's publishing services and community teams, she provides community support and contributes to educational resources development and instructional documentation. And we also have Jennifer Zerke presenting with Ioana, excuse me, getting that right. Jennifer is a copyright specialist at SFU Copyright Office, where she develops and delivers copyright education and information to instructors, researchers, students, and staff. She completed the Creative Commons Certificate for Librarians in 2018 and supports SFU members in using and creating open educational resources. Jennifer's current research is looking at the stakeholder recommendations and outcomes of the 2017 Parliamentary Review of Canada's Copyright Act, with a focus on using these findings to support future advocacy for copyright and user rights in higher education and libraries. And for those of us that follow these things, we know that AI and copyright and all sorts of things are going on in the background that are pretty interesting, which I know you're not talking about today, but I know that's like a big thing that's happening. So welcome to both of you. And thanks again for joining us. And I'm turning it over to you.
Thanks, Catherine. I'll just share our screen. You see okay? Yeah, right now. And you can hear me? Okay. Yeah, okay. Thanks again. Our presentation is on empowering learning through open education, integrating Creative Commons into course publishing projects. Catherine already mentioned this. And without further ado, yes, I'm Ioana, digital publishing librarian at SFU. And at SFU, digital publishing provides software, training, and expertise for members of the SFU community who are creating online open access publications, including journals, conference proceedings, volumes of student work, and textbooks. Over the past few years, including this fall term with English for 17, the digital publishing partnered with instructors in different university departments to implement course journals or course books in their classrooms. Course journals provide librarians with an opportunity to collaborate with instructors to design and deliver a course integrated term-length project where the course instructor is responsible for the course syllabus, lesson plans, grading rubrics, and final assessment. And the librarian contributes expertise related to scholarly communication instruction and technical and editorial support. A bit now about the public knowledge project, since our in-class publishing projects use open source software developed by the PKP, Open Journal Systems, OJS, and Open Monograph Press, OMP. PKP is an SFU core facility dedicated to developing open source software, conducting research, and furthering open access to scholarly research. In other words, making research a public good that Sarah just mentioned, the public good. We'll go back, we're going back there. Currently, we do support about 12 student journals, 18 faculty journals, 11 course projects, 4 student volumes using OMP and 7 using OJS. So these projects are an approach to student writing and publishing that involves students in the production of an online open access journal or book within a structured classroom environment, as I already mentioned. These projects feature students' work and involve students in the publishing process, where they can learn about scholarly publishing and practice things like peer review, copy editing, for example, while getting course credit for their work. A librarian is available to visit a class to discuss topics such as author rights, copyright, open access publishing, Creative Commons licensing, and more. Jen will provide additional details about these in a moment. A few of the benefits of these in-class publishing projects. These projects, an example of open pedagogy in practice. They engage students as information creators by involving them in contributing, editing, publishing content. They teach students about the scholarly publishing system and improve their information literacy through hands-on experiential learning. These projects move away from the disposable assignment and provide students with a worldwide audience. They educate the next generation of scholars about the value of open access, open education, open source software, about the value of the university and student contributions to scholarly conversations by showcasing the final revised version of student research and creative work. Furthermore, they reduce the barrier between the classroom and the broader community by, for example, allowing for public comment after publication. If you would think, how do they look like? These are some examples of student volumes created in previous terms by SFU students. And we'll pass these on to Jen now.
Thanks, Ioana. So as Ioana said, every semester that a course is doing a publishing project, she and I will typically go into the class early in the semester to provide some information about copyright, Creative Commons licenses, and publishing in general before the students really get too far in these projects. So we start with an introduction to digital publishing, the OJS platform, and course journals in general, similar to what Ioana has just talked about here. Then we provide an introduction to copyright, including what types of works it protects, what rights it includes, and how long it lasts. We talk about authors' rights, both in traditional or subscription publishing and in open access publishing, and how publishing agreements or publishing contracts work. We cover this stuff at a pretty high general level, which provides us a foundation for talking about how a course journal is quite similar to open access publishing. So it is giving them some of this real world experience in their typically undergrad degree. Then we can also talk about how it's different from a typical class assignment, like Ioana said, that is just shared with the class or handed into the instructor, and that's it. So this helps us get students thinking about what it means to work in this way that reaches beyond the classroom and to make their work openly available online. It's not just about letting people read it, but thinking about how they might reuse, remix, or repurpose it. So we talk about all the different ways other people might want to use the project, both within and outside the discipline and within and outside academia. We then give an overview of Creative Commons or CC licenses. If you're not familiar with CC licenses, they are a set of 6 licenses that a copyright owner can apply to their work that essentially provide upfront permission for users to reuse the work in a variety of ways, usually including the right to adapt or edit the work and repurpose it in quite an open-ended way. Some of the licenses do have restrictions, for example, non-commercial use only, but they are generally quite open. So we talk about things to think about when deciding which license to choose, because either the class as a whole or individual students will have to pick a license for their work. So we think about, like, where is your comfort level with letting others reuse your work? What do you want others to be able to do with the work, or what do you not want them to be able to do? And this is something that's really important to us, that students think through this part and make an informed decision. Again, rather than just doing whatever the instructor is telling them or something that's being imposed on them that way. This is a connection again to that sort of real world experience. Your work is going to be out there. You really do want to play an active role in thinking about the permissions that you're giving other people. And then finally, we also talk about how to incorporate images or other content that someone else has created, including both sort of fully all rights reserved content as well as openly licensed content. Incorporating material that is not openly licensed or that has a different CC license than the journal or the essay or article itself just requires some very clear information to be included, communication with the user about the copyright status of that content, so that users know how that image can or cannot be reused with the article. And then we demo or provide a few places to find openly licensed content that does just make it a little bit easier to incorporate. And then after the class visit, we make ourselves available by email, or sometimes we'll offer a follow-up visit if questions or concerns are coming up. So that's basically how we work with instructors in classes to kind of get them set up for these course publishing projects. And I think that's everything for us. So we are happy to take questions either now or follow up by email if you have them. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much. Wondering if monitoring in a couple of different places, if there's questions out there. Maybe just while we're waiting for people to formulate some questions, I'm wondering if you could tell us, this assignment is fantastic, the idea of students going out into the world and knowing they're going to be producing for other people to look at. Did that come from faculty, or was that something that came from the library in terms of getting those projects off the ground? Like, who approached who about that?
Well, I was not here since the beginning, but my perception, let's say, is that it was libraries' approach, probably approaching instructors about these options being out there, and probably starting with Kevin Stranak back a few years. Yes. And then it gets to be ongoing relationships. For example, this is like the 4-year in which we get to collaborate with the same instructor on different, like, for example, they started using OJS, and then they decided that's too much editorial work. So then we started to investigate another options, and it ended up using OMP, Open Monograph Press, instead. And so on. But we're happy to see this like ongoing relationship and returning instructors continuing and finding these course projects meaningful, both for them and for their students, I think. Right? Sorry, Jen, if you'd like to add something.
No, I think you covered it.
It's a comment from one of our attendees saying, thanks, really cool. I would have been so into this assignment as a student. I think that real world exposure, it's very powerful.
Thank you. And I'm glad Caitlin mentioned that, because there are students out there or certain content that might not be okay. And then we're always kind of very careful to provide these options and recommendations to instructors for, if there are students out there that might not feel comfortable participating in this type of assignment, or at any point they would like their work to be withdrawn, we do that in the future. So the students are quite comfortable when they are approached for this kind of assignments.
Fantastic. I'm just seeing, are there any other questions or comments in the chat? I don't see any, but I think everyone knows how to get in touch with you. It's very inspiring. I'm thinking about, how could we get involved in something like that? So thank you so much to both of you for coming today and sharing that with us. It's very appreciated.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks for all the questions.
Thank you so much.